I apologize if that sun is brighter in the rear, that beautiful sun behind me. I'm driving, I'm not sure where I am. I may be on Route 66 outside Albuquerque. I may be on Route 40 heading towards 66, or I'm on 66 heading towards Route 40. I'm not sure. But anyways, I'm listening to some videos and it sparked a topic that I wanted to get down on video that I haven't heard anybody address, but I don't consume a ton of philosophical or political content. I mostly consume comedy content. So, a little preface or preface to this. I do believe that there are systems, and the idea of a system is, for example, I'll use like either a government or corporation, or the government, where people are elected and put in and work for it, and these rules are put into place, and it grows, and people are doing A, B, and C based on what the system tells them to do, and they're not taking accountability for what they're doing does to the large picture. Similar to corporations, which is a government entity. It's not a private entity. I think the government is actually the private sector, and free business ideas are the public sector, because it's open to the public. The public actually gets to use them or not use them, and then they stay or go away. The private sector, you don't get a say in what they do. They just do what they're going to do. You're not allowed. It's your own club. But that's kind of off topic. So I do believe in systems, and a system is just when people create these ideas, or a job or a government or something, and it's multi-generational, and then you lose track of why certain things are made, and they never get out of it. So this kind of machine of people just being NPCs, just running, doing the same thing day to day to get a paycheck, and they never actually look to what it's causing. So you lose. It's more like the Borg in Star Trek, where you lose track of the individual within these parameters. But technically, the government and systems are only concepts where it's just people. It's just a group of people. So there's no such thing as a true government objectively. It's just people with guns and a monopoly on force. Now, I do believe, and a lot of people are going to beat me up on this in the comments until they really think about it and understand this. I do believe that there is a conceptual patriarchy, and I do believe on the other end there's a conceptual feminism. However, what I don't think people understand is the patriarchy are these group of individuals that started feminism. And I'm not talking about true, like 1970s Christina Hoffman, forget her name, Hofstetter or Hoffman, apologize Christina, true feminists, or even Shoe on Head. Like, she's a little bit more new age, but there's still some true feminists that are just trying to figure out ways that we can at least recognize the differences between genders to help each other out. However, so let's go back to this. In the past, women get their power when they're young. They start hitting puberty, and in a lot of Christian cultures where they had a particular system, they hit puberty and they got their periods around 18, which is why we have a lot of consent around sexual consent type stuff around 18. Other cultures with a little bit more stress, and you can go look at the studies on this, puberty and periods and menstruation and all that stuff with females happens around 12. That's why in some other countries, you get an age of consent around 12. So I'm not here to make a moral judgment. That can be a whole different video. But around this time, women start getting attention from men, or at least from men that have also hit puberty, that have a biological urge to mate and reproduce, and vice versa. And once a woman recognizes that she has this power, it can be quite intoxicating. I'm sure you guys know all the quotes about power or whatever. I don't have to repeat of any of them here. So once you understand there was a small window in the past where females had this power, and they could use this power to find a good husband, a good mate, supportive to have children with, and they couldn't control through birth control when they would get pregnant, there was a huge incentive for them to make sure that they were only having sexual partners that were desirable, that would make good husbands. Now, here's where the sneakiness comes in. Here's where the patriarchy, quote unquote, and feminism are two sides of the same coin. When you look at stuff like teeth whitening, makeup, red lipstick, rosy red cheeks, high heels, all these things enhance sexuality and fertility. So a woman with rosy red lips, she's trying to shut down the I'm not saying she's doing this maliciously, but this is the biology around it. Men with weaker prefrontal cortexes will see red lips, and animalistically, it'll try to shut down the prefrontal cortex, which will give them literally control of the lizard brain. And this is when you hear terms about being V-whipped or wrapped around her pinky or whatever. High heels, pushing the butt up. There's all sorts of things, and these are enhancing this. So that window was really small in the past, because you would meet somebody, you might get married first, you have kids, and then you're off the dating market, and you hope you pick somebody good that is going to be till death does you part. And the reason being is marriage wasn't a government contract in the past. Marriage was just that. It was the marriage between two individuals, and the marriage was actually the child. So if you've ever worked in the service industry, or you heard these terms or whatever, you can't marry alcohol. So if the alcohol is low, you don't pour it into another bottle. You don't marry ketchup bottles in case there's bacteria or germs or whatever. But the idea of marriage is to take two things, marry them, combine them together. So marriage was the child. It wasn't the arrangement. It wasn't the paperwork like it's thought of today. Now, as women continue to try to hold on to that power of sexuality as long as they can, you got a whole bunch of people making money off it, and you can kind of consider this advertising of prolonged sexual power as the patriarchy. So you have a corporation that wants to sell white strips to teeth. Me personally, if I really care about somebody, if they're brushing their teeth and they're using mouthwash and stuff, I don't need bright white teeth like they're a child when you first get your brand new teeth. I actually met a very attractive woman in Montana that was very outdoorsy, absolutely no makeup. She didn't have dyed hair. She had regular hair thrown in a ponytail. She didn't shave her body hair. So she had leg hair, armpit hair. It didn't bother me because she was actually really sweet, very intelligent, knew a lot about topics, had a great personality. The conversation was in-depth, reflective. She had so many qualities that these things that people think they need to do to be attractive, they're out the window. So if you're selling white strips, if you're selling lipsticks, if you're selling hair dye, if you're selling sexy dresses, if you're selling plastic surgery, there's a whole industry put together to sell to women, And these women buy it because, and I'm not sure, this is a chicken versus egg scenario, because these people creating the things wouldn't be able to sell them unless the women wanted to purchase them. If they just said, well, I just have a husband, I have a good boyfriend, I'm not wearing makeup anymore, they're out of business. So there's an incentive to keep pushing new patriarchal ideas to quote unquote empower women to continue to try to spread their sexuality out as long as possible. And earlier when I mentioned that the makeup and the hair whitening, the teeth whitening and all that stuff was a biological weapon towards men, where you're trying to shut down their prefrontal cortex in order to get to that lizard brain. This power that these women are extending is a similar drug. So as they get this power and they get addicted to it and they get likes and they get dopamine hits and they're on social media and they be called beautiful and all this stuff, that don't even get me into the amount of fake accounts on social media that I think are run by either government or foreign operatives or whatever, because if you really start looking at what's being said on what accounts, and then you look at an independent account where they actually have true comments, the structure of the comments on these global industries is just fake. So they're creating this social pressure for women through these techniques to take advantage of the biological feeling that men and women get when they get power. So I feel some bit of sorrow for these women, but I remember an old South Park where they were making fun of Jersey Shore and everybody's saying, why, how is this still on? How is it still possible? And everybody's like making fun of it and talking about it and joking. Then South Park was like, look away. Just look away and they'll go away. And it's like, all you have to do, if you can give up the power, if you can throw that ring into the volcano, is just stop wearing the makeup, stop leading with sexuality, work on a personality, take decent care of yourself hygienically, in shape, and stop throwing all your money at these things. Now, well, do I think this will happen? I don't. I don't think that the patriarchy will ever cease to exist, and I don't necessarily think it's a patriarchal thing. I'll do another video on this. I think it's a bell curve IQ thing, where there's a group of individuals that their ancestors have pre-selected for intellect, and as they pre-select for intellect and they get higher and higher up in the chain, some people say it's lack of empathy or whatever, or sociopathy. I just think it's the higher intellect is, the more you rely on pure logic, which could be bad. You need some wisdom to mix in to societal standards, where it's not all about input in, input out. There's a gray area in there for people. And also, I think that people being addicted to power is a good thing. And I don't mean that having power is good or being addicted to power is good, but it's more of like a yin-yang thing. So if you can see and recognize and explain and teach to people what power does to people, you need that there so you can be humbled. And I don't mean this in a negative, like Christian way where you are derogatory towards yourself, but I just mean like modest and understanding, and make decisions where you're not feeding off power. And without realizing that power exists in the world, you're not going to be able to live that lifestyle. So it's important to have both elements. So I'll just end this with, if you're a man of any sort, that's looking to like date, for me personally, I would try to find women that I'm attracted to that have good features, that are kind and intelligent. And there is a certain curve where you won't find them completely physically attractive, so there's going to be some physical thing in there, but some of the beauty will come from their personality. So you have raw attraction, which can be enhanced by the beauty of their personality, and vice versa. If you see somebody with raw absolute attraction and you get to know them more and they're not a good person, the beauty will fade and you'll be less attracted to them. For women, I would sit down, and a lot of people will say, accountability, it's a woman's kryptonite. So let's not say accountability, ladies. I would say sit down with yourself, look inside, figure out what you have for attraction. So if you have a good shape right now, I probably wouldn't try to bring it to the next level with makeup, because once you go down that road, you can never go back. And when you're looking in the mirror, you're going to give yourself beauty dysmorphia, because you're pretty much putting a real life filter on your face. So if you can become comfortable with what you look like raw, and understand that you may not get the attention, the help that you need when you're out in the real world as much as you did if you were dressed up, you'll become more self-sufficient, which will benefit you. But also, when you attract a man, you'll know that he's fully alert, that his prefrontal cortex is not shut down, that he's talking to you as an actual individual. He's not drugged on these dopamine and serotonin receptors that you're creating through these releases. And then furthermore, be realistic in the standards that you set for yourself with beauty, with yourself, because as time goes on, you're fighting a losing battle. And you can go on to TikTok. I don't have social media, so I don't know what the big one is now. I'm assuming it's still TikTok. You go on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and see older women in their 40s crying, yelling at men, where's my husband, men are terrible. And you can look at it like that if you want. Vice versa, there's a whole group of men that are younger that haven't collected resources or worked on their personality or their dating strategies or whatever, that hate all women, or they think all women are worse, or they're just power hungry, or they're abusive. But as a woman, the patriarchy is kind of that 20% of men at the top that's using your biological power against you to make you think you need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to get their attention. They're using your hypergamy against you as a weapon. They're using your fear of losing your attraction as a weapon. They're using your... the world is a much scarier place for women. They're smaller in most cases. They're not as strong as in most cases. Depending on their upbringing, their lineage, and their heritage, they're probably not going to, even if they have the intellect to do a high-paying job like engineering or any of the STEM fields, they're not going to be emotionally or physically, because they're all one and the same, satisfied with that, because there's not enough people. It's a really dry profession. So there's a lot of frightening things in the world that are set in the reality of a person's personality. So if you can try to work on counterbalancing those, that would be very beneficial for you. So I guess I'm just going to end this by saying, take some time to reflect on what other people are thinking. So when a woman's saying, the patriarchy's holding me back, and when men are saying, I hate feminism, it's easy to just say, these people are hurt, or these who hurt you, or you don't know what you're talking about, or you're brainwashed, or just throw out labels like incels, or leftover women, or libtard, or alt-right or Nazi, whatever the terms are, whatever. It's really easy to dismiss people, put them in a category called the other, rather than listen to them and try to put yourself in their shoes for their experience. So, man, I really do think that the women are up against a concept of the patriarchy, and in reality that concept is the government entity called the corporation that worked alongside the government program of New Age feminism to convince women that they need to buy all these products to be successful. And the last thing I'll say is both sexes should think about these two things: pornography and Instagram, or social media and pornography. Men, I think you need to quit pornography. It's messing up your brain. You're got to go out and meet real women face to face, talk to them, and get the reality of the situation. And women, the same thing. Social media has got the filters and people putting highlight reels on there, and you're comparing yourself to that instead of like the reality of the situation. And both of these are very damaging to your mental capacity. There's a audio book called The Easy Peasy Way for anybody to quit pornography. And I would suggest that both genders take back their sexual power. And the way that you do this is you quit pornography, so you're not fantasizing about someone else. You're not putting somebody on a pedestal that you're thinking. And then if you can do that, remove fantasies in your brain. So instead of picturing women in your life or men in your life and having fantasies about them that you're masturbating to, if you need to masturbate because you're not in a steady relationship, and the beauty of this, if you're in a steady relationship, you can focus all your sexual energy on that individual. But if you can get yourself to a place where, and I've done this because I met a yogi and she taught me how to do this, and she's been doing this, is you go back to more of an animalistic thing, and this is the crazy, the only way that I can think about it is like, picture like a monkey in the zoo just masturbating, living the dream, locking eyes with you. I'm not saying do that, I'm not saying just run around, whatever, but get in touch with yourself and what feels good, and don't put somebody else in charge of your sexual attraction or your sexual fantasies, because when you do that, you can go out into the world and meet people, and man or woman. So for a man, if you haven't had sex because it's more difficult, you're not putting this female way up on a pedestal. And for a woman who can get sex all the time, if you're getting it from multiple men, you can create damage, risk of STDs. Being promiscuous has multiple reports of the damage on women, which is another reason that they continue to push it, because let's get real, there's other corporations, the pharmaceutical companies that are saying, oh yeah, you just have this thing. And it's like, well, for hundreds of years we didn't do this, and now we do this, and everybody feels terrible about themselves, and the solution is this pill. And it's like, maybe the solution is we need to get back to basics and not do a lot of this stuff. So I know I said a lot of stuff in this video. Hopefully it sparks your mind to start thinking about some of these structures that are affecting people. And if you're a man, think about what women are up against, this huge structure. And if you're a woman, think about how that's damaging you and what men are up against when you're feeding into that structure.